We are live, ladies and gentlemen. 3:30 p.m. Mountain Time, Monday through Friday. It means it's orange and blue today, and it means it's Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason talking about the Denver Broncos and the hits. They don't stop with the Broncos, and you may think, well, there's not a whole lot going on. Well, it doesn't have to be with the Broncos for it to be about the Broncos. So, Mace, welcome into the program as always. But we have a Russell Wilson scope to talk about, which I think is quite important and something relevant we can discuss. They've said it's bothered him for years. So now Russell Wilson with a knee scope, that's good. You and I have talked about how he needs to be better in terms of you're going to run, you're going to be a running quarterback, and you may not like it or want it or whatever, but that's what you're best at, and that's what you're going to have to be for the Broncos this season. So Russell Wilson knee scope. We have a trade that did go down, but didn't. Lots to get to, but the scope is interesting, and it's not uncommon, Mace, when we get past the season and then all of a sudden news is out like, oh yeah, that guy had a knee scope.
Yeah, usually the funny thing is we hear about these sorts of things happening. We hear about them like in the week after the season, right? Usually we get word. Sometimes we find out in the locker room the day after the season finale. Oh, so-and-so is going to have a knee scope or whatever. One reason I think we maybe didn't find out about this is typically a lot of those things that we'll end up learning at the postseason press conference, because the coach usually does a press conference right after the season. And of course, we didn't have that this year because Jerry Rossberg was an interim and that was it. And they went right into the Sean Payton search. So some of these things kind of got buried a little bit, but it's interesting that this is something that's bothered Russell Wilson for multiple years, because when he has become less mobile over the years and less reliant upon his legs. But in the last few years in particular, it certainly accelerated a bit. So now maybe you have, I wouldn't say a full explanation, and I wouldn't say it's even the number one or number two reason, but now you have a piece of the puzzle that falls into place learning this.
Right. It's age, one. And two, he's trying to play differently. But yeah, and we saw it. He would take off to run and not be quite as explosive or not be able to change direction quite as much. And I think as far as physique goes, we're talking about the knee scope, but I think also we'll see a tighter Russell Wilson this year because believe you me, he's heard even his former teammates talking about how, his size is getting him a little bit round in the middle, and he's heard that, and I'm sure he will correct that as much as possible. You never want a rocked up quarterback. I always urge people, like the two rocked up quarterbacks that I remember couldn't play, Tim Tebow and Curtis Painter. So you don't necessarily need the six-pack abs, but yeah, I can't tell you to lose weight, but I can tell you to get tighter.
Well, the other thing also is, with Tim Tebow, it was a classic example of working hard but not working smart. He should have been working on how to better read defenses. He should have been working on his delivery. Instead, he's showing up for the New York Jets with his shirt off and showing off the guns and showing off the abs and all that. Everyone's like, oh, and I'm thinking, like, how is this going to make him a better quarterback? People are going gaga, but it didn't make him a better quarterback. So it's working on the things that matter. And but like you say, I mean, Russell Wilson did look a little bit thicker. Okay. And that, and here's the thing that, you mentioned age. You're 34 years old. Middle age is starting to happen. And metabolism works in different ways when you start getting to that point in life. So you have to work harder, maybe do some different things. I mean, you could argue that Tom Brady, he certainly was, he was pretty well in shape into his 40s. He probably worked harder and had to work harder as he got into his late 30s and 40s to maintain that physique than he ever would have in his 20s. Because you're fighting the passage of time. You're fighting the little aches and pains that pop up a little more over time. I actually, this morning, I was, struggling a little bit because I felt like some soreness in my upper back, and I'm like, oh man,
And that's just because you slept wrong. That's not even because you did anything. Like, you just, when you get older, you sleep with a crick in your neck and all of a sudden you can't move.
Yeah, I still have it at 3:30 though. That's the problem. So, we're just muddling through here.
You need some Nuprin, little, yellow, different.
Do they even make that anymore?
I don't think so. I don't think so either. I would buy it just so I could take it out of the bottle and be like, little, yellow, different.
Do we just want to do the whole thing from Wayne's World? I mean, like
the Pepsi?
Like Pepsi, yeah. It's your choice. Yes. And it's the choice of a new generation. He just takes it.
Takes a sip. There you go. We need
you have to smile.
Right. We need the coffee mugs with the logos on them. But anyway, like, yeah, I think get it the right way. I think
inside joke.
Yes, inside baseball sometimes. But I think Russ, here's so many misconceptions about Russell Wilson, Mason. It honestly just pisses me off because people are like, oh, he doesn't care, or like he's selfish, or like, no, he wants to be coached. He will listen. You got to tell him why. You can't be like Hackett and just let him do whatever, leave him to his own devices. Like, no, coach him, tell him why. Obviously, Sean Payton's going to do that. But for the people like, oh, he's worried about being a celebrity. Even Seattle fans have said that, right? He married Sierra and then he's worried about the celebrity lifestyle. Russell Wilson wants to be great at football. He does. So this talk about the physique and cleaning up the knee, like, that's something. And knee scopes, it's interesting. And guys, their own bodies, right? I'm never going to tell a player like you should have got surgery or whatever. But Mace, a lot of guys that like will opt to maybe go without surgery because they can maybe heal by the time of the season. Wilson had obviously done that for a few years and decided finally, you know what? I need to clean it up.
Well, and depending on what the actual knee problem is, I mean, sometimes you can get by without it. I mean, just for example of something that you can just go in and have a quick knee scope and clean up. Sometimes your knee, you can be functioning just fine, but you've got like a loose body in your knee that kind of is broken off, and you're feeling it with a lot of your steps, and then so you need to have that knee scope go in, take it out, and go on with your life, right? I mean, we don't know the exact details of what Russell Wilson's discomfort was, but it was enough to where he felt like he needed to do it. And he'd reached a point where he didn't want to deal with it anymore, whatever it was. It wasn't something that kept him from playing. The injuries that kept him from playing are the ones that we saw the last 2 years, including the thumb injury back in the 2021 season when he was still with Seattle. So whatever it was not serious enough to keep him off the field, but it was something that bothered him enough to where he felt like he needed to do this. And I do wonder, between this and we've seen the pictures of him on social media, apparently looking more svelte, right? Mm-hmm. I do wonder if last season was so humbling for him that he's simply saying, okay, if it's something that maybe I thought I kind of need to do in previous off seasons, it's like, okay, I better get it done right now. Like it's because it's kind of a now or never moment for Russell Wilson, at least in Seattle.
It is Denver. It is certainly a now or never moment. And what's the old saying? Real G's move in silence. Like, I kind of like the fact that we don't need to see every workout. Even Sean Payton talked about it. What did Payton say about
anonymous donors?
Anonymous donors. Yes. I like the fact that like, you're just going to show up in shape. I don't need to see every workout. I don't need to. Dennis Miller had an old saying about someone I won't bring up or else everyone will lose their mind. But he's like, if you have to brag about how rich you are, you're bankrupt in all the ways that really matter. So if you're going around, and I've had Seattle people tell me this, I'll tell you off air who it was. But like, I've had Seattle people tell me, like, if you're working hard, you don't have to tell everybody you're doing that. And that was something, as someone who knew the relationship was falling apart like 3 years ago, that was something that drove Seattle people crazy. It's like, you don't need to know, like, you don't have to tell us your work, just work hard. And we know that Russell Wilson is a hard worker. We just need to see all that stuff.
Exactly. And we're in the age, unfortunately, where players tend to want to show things, teams as well. I mean, that's why this offseason looks and feels so different, not just for Russell Wilson, but for the Broncos as a whole. I mean, we're not seeing as much. I imagine when they get back to Broncos headquarters and start doing team organized work next month, that we're not going to see as much as we have seen in the recent past. It's going to be very much in stealth. And I think Sean Payton said something at his first press conference as Broncos head coach about it being what they show in the season rather than what they show in the off season. And so that's gonna make the entire next few months look different, and it's gonna leave us guessing a bit, but maybe that's a good thing, because I think sometimes we look at the off season and what we saw and put too much into it and try to make too much of an evaluation or a judgment based on it, positively or negatively. Now it seems like it's going to be a lot quieter.
David brings up something that we kind of touched on a little bit on coffee break, about, the Broncos winning with Russell Wilson. If things look good this year, then you pay that money. The salary cap's going up, and obviously it'll be a hefty amount that you pay to Russell Wilson. But Mace, if they look good, let's say they steal one in the wild card round, because I don't think anyone's saying they're going to win the division. No one should be saying that. But they get to the wild card round and they beat Jacksonville or something, which is debatable. But like, let's say they do that and they go to the divisional round and they lose to Kansas City or whatever. But Wilson played well. Well, yeah, I mean, you're going to move forward and you're going to pay him. Will there be a restructure or whatever? Okay, later. Let's see what this season does. But I don't think there's any question that this year is like, set up a really good team as much as you can for Wilson to see if you can do it with good support around him.
And see if he's worth the extra $37 million that kicks in on the fifth day of the next league year, if he's still on the roster, because that's when his 2025 base salary will come guaranteed, on the fifth day of the 2024 league year. That's what this is about. And if you have that type of season where you get to the playoffs and maybe you win a game, unless he looks like Peyton Manning in 2015, where it's clear like the defense is carrying him. I mean, like in 2015, Peyton had 9 touchdowns and 17 interceptions, right? If it looks like that and you go to the playoffs, you're probably finding a way to get out of that contract before even more money comes on it in 2024, right? So there's that scenario where you could be a playoff team, but you're a playoff team for every reason but Russell Wilson. But that's unlikely. If this team is in the playoffs this coming season, it's more likely that Russell Wilson at least got himself back to a league average level. And if you look at the year-to-year trend line and say, okay, he got better in his first season with Sean Payton, then I expect that they would have him on the roster for the fifth day of the league year when that 2025 salary becomes guaranteed. And basically you can say Russell Wilson's your quarterback for the next 2 years, 24 and 25 after that, if they are a playoff team and it looks normal. I mean, like I said, there's that unlikely scenario where you're a playoff team and Russell Wilson doesn't look good and is not a reason why you got there. But it's far more likely that if you get to the playoffs, it's because Russell Wilson got the car pointed back in the right direction and the arrow pointed up again.
Yes, and one thing about that, Mace, as you point out, like there's a chance they get to the postseason and Russell Wilson's like below average. But if you're doing that, you feel good about the team that you're building, and like, okay, when we get the quarterback, whoever that is, we're going to be better off than this idea of like tear it all down and lose a bunch of games. Like that doesn't work, because like you have to have the team so that when you get your quarterback, it's like football and life, man. It's all about timing.
And they're not tearing it down. I mean, even though you can have a legitimate debate over whether a full tear down would have been a logical way to go about this year, I think there's a case to be made for that. But that's not what they were going to do. Now, is this year about evaluating a lot of players and seeing if they're part of your long-term plans? Absolutely, it is. But the free agency moves show it's not about a complete teardown. It's about you're trying to win, but the evaluation process does matter. And so, don't be surprised if Sean Payton looks at where things are going midseason and beyond and sees some guys that don't fit the culture he wants to build. And even if the team goes 9-8 or even 10-7, that there are some changes with expiring contracts next year and guys not brought back.
Steve says you need to burn the Let's Ride towel.
Although, why is it gonna be a jinx? I mean, it kind of is what it is at this point. Maybe it just needs to stay up until they figure things out. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, Steve is not the only one. See, you're not the only one who's pointed that out to me about the Let's Ride towel. And do we really need to have it up?
I still have our T-shirts from last year's training camp. What was it? Ready to ride, or something? It totally wasn't Let's Ride.
It was like ready to
ride. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's got the E as a 3, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll tell you this, though. That towel, the Let's Ride towel there, I think that's a collector's item. I don't think we're going to see the Let's Ride flag and the Let's Ride iconography around the Broncos this year. Like I mentioned a couple of months ago, on the sign, the digital sign outside the field house, the day after the season, Let's Ride was gone. It was just Bronco logos. That's it. No more. Gone. I guess I should go back down there sometime and see if see what the signage is at this point. But yeah, Let's Ride it. Let's Ride is Let's Gone. So it's over. So it's just one of those things. I got the Let's Ride towel. I've got the towel from the Colorado Rapids playoff game on Thanksgiving of 2021. They lost. Not a lot of good mojo. I think that's a Colorado Springs Switchbacks, and I have the sweatshirt on. I think that they won. They did win that game when they gave away the towel. So the towels, the towels on set are 1 and 2.
Our friend Jim Sakamano, who's like one of the greatest of all time, he will always remind you that the towel thing started in Denver before the terrible towels.
Really?
The towel thing was a Denver thing. They gave out orange towels, and then like it was a year or two later, and Myron Cope was like, the terrible towels. So yeah, the towel thing was a Denver thing.
Were they towels or were they just kind of pieces of orange fabric? Because
the way Jim will tell it is they were towels.
All right.
So were they face cloths or hand towels? I'm not sure, but yeah, Jim will tell you they were towels.
I thought they were towels, or just they weren't necessarily towels. They were pieces of fabric. I want to say that the late Charlie Goldberg was involved with that, and they were basically like kind of for a lot of people it was orange kind of fabric squares, and people would kind of bring them, and then of course they got on Orange Sunday. Got into the whole thing of giving out signs, and so everyone would wear orange, and then everybody would hold up the orange, the orange, the little sign that they gave you, and so the stadium would be a sea of orange, and then you'd have all the pictures taken and all that. Like there used to be postcards of Old Mile High when everyone's holding up the orange, and the stadium was just a sea of orange. So yeah,
don't forget to bring a towel. So
oh my
there
gosh.
You go.
Of course, you bring up Myron Cope, Mr. Steeler. You.
Yeah. I'm retired. I'm retired.
I've actually got it. You can't see it. I've got I'm
retired.
I've actually got a terrible towel, but you can't see it.
I don't think fans want to see it.
No, but it's not a yellow terrible towel. At the Broncos Steelers game, it was their cancer game, and so it's a pink breast cancer towel.
Very good. Just glad the NFL started embracing that after they fined D'Angelo Williams. Remember that?
No, I was actually, I think I was working for the Panthers.
I think you worked for the Panthers then. Yeah.
It was the stupidest, most ridiculous thing you could possibly imagine. I think it was in 2008 when they fined him.
You can't wear that. Supporting cancer. Like what?
Supporting cancer research. I mean,
yes.
No, yeah. We're supporting cancer research and to find a cure. Nobody's supporting cancer. Nobody's pro-cancer.
Right. And the NFL was like, I don't know what the NFL was, but anyway, they've totally changed. Usually because of money. That's the bad thing of like all their programs. And I don't want to get the conversation off track because we could go way off track, but it's very sad when you learn like, oh, they're only promoting that because they're getting paid to do that.
Well, I
just sad.
mean, it was the National Guard thing, right? Like the whole thing of we found out that the U.S. National Guard was paying teams and
Right.
for what they were doing, in terms of pregame pomp for the national anthem and all that, and that was really it's disappointing, but it's not surprising. But you look at right now with the NFL, and now breast cancer has become all forms of cancer, like in terms of their initiative, which is terrific, and actually, a big part of the genesis for that is right here in Denver. It was the late Luke Kellerman, who was worked in turf over at the stadium, who battled colon cancer, from which she eventually passed away, and asked the question, we talk about breast cancer, but what about all other forms of cancer? So it was the Broncos that they turn it into the Fight Like a Bronco campaign. And now that's why that's the origin point of what you see when you now see like the multicolored sweatshirts and all that, to symbolize, because each color is like a different, like there's blue for prostate cancer, there's pink for breast cancer, etc. That symbolizes all the various kind of cancers that people tragically have to deal with. So we did bring it back to the Broncos there, but don't for like so. But I think that is a sincere campaign.
I hope so.
I'm much cooler on the military stuff in November, but I think a lot of that goes toward like disabled veterans as well, if I'm not mistaken. So,
which is great. I wish they wouldn't do it without getting paid though. Like I got a bunch of family in the military. Like there's no one more pro-military than me. Although I'm so anti-war, but I am pro for our veterans and our military.
Well, we're all pro the people in the military. We're pro those who serve. I think you can be opposed to war and the existence of war and be pro-military, and in terms of being pro enlist, everyone who enlists in the service, in the various armed services. I think there's a difference between the two, and I would hope that nobody out there is anti those who choose to serve in the military, because a lot of people have a lot of really sound reasons for wanting to serve their country that way.
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
I know. Ideally, ideally, if you have force, so you never have to use it, right? That's the goal.
That's the whole thing. The NFL, just please care about things, please, like real care. We care about Jerry Jeudy. How's that for a transition? And the Elijah Moore trade.
Heck of a transition.
Radio professional, Mace. The Elijah Moore trade means that Jerry Jeudy's not going anywhere yet. But how real was this with the Browns, and their interest in Jerry Jeudy was certainly promoted and pushed, and we know it was there, but how real was it? And you actually tweeted about it, and the comparison between what Moore is worth from a trade value chart compared to Jeudy. And it's Elijah Moore who gets dealt from the Jets to the Browns today, not Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, Elijah Moore doesn't have as many skins on the wall as in the parlance of John Fox. And so basically the end value for him, because there was an exchange of draft picks involved, as in the Browns send a 2 and get back a 3 to the Jets. So basically Elijah Moore was traded for, depending on the draft value chart you use, the equivalent of the 60th to the 67th pick. And if he's worth that, Jerry Jeudy's worth more than that, because Jeudy has been a higher level performer unequivocally over the course of his career. Even taking out the notion that Elijah Moore wanted out, and maybe Jerry Jeudy has not indicated publicly that he wants out. He hasn't indicated publicly any recent dissatisfaction with the Broncos. Elijah Moore wanted out of New York, and now he's got it. So that does factor as well. But we've known kind of all along that for Jerry Jeudy, the price was either a first round pick or a two and something else, right? So now Cleveland's away from the table here when it comes to Jerry Jeudy. It doesn't mean that other teams might not come into the fold for Jeudy, and this is why, again, keep your eyes open into the draft as well with both Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. If they're still on this team going into the draft, they may not be on the team when the draft is done, because the Broncos do want more picks this year. They want more choices. And Sean Payton, one thing that we have seen is that he's not afraid to jettison players who are decent to good for somebody equivalent just because because they're somewhere coming from somewhere else and they offer a different kind of attitude, a little bit of a transfusion into the team. So that's the thing. Just because Jerry Jeudy has accomplished some things as a pro doesn't mean he's not on the market. The thing to watch now is, does the market for Jerry Jeudy look better after the first day of the draft if teams have gotten through day one and they wanted a receiver but didn't get one out of that first round crop?
Right. And now with the Elijah Moore trade, Mace, we have like an established market. You're getting almost a mile marker, right? To be like, okay, now we can kind of build off that. It's almost like if someone signs a contract at your position and you can say, well, I'm better than that guy, so I need to deserve more. So now that the Moore trade has been done, any team approaching the Broncos can say, hey, the Jets did this with the Browns, but we're going to do this. Yeah. And it's going to be more for Jerry Jeudy if he is dealt.
Right, exactly. So I don't think this hurts the Broncos' cause in any way, unless their goal is to get rid of Jerry Jeudy lock, stock, and barrel, which it could be. Like I've said it before on air, I've said it to you, I'll say it again. If the Broncos have decided that they're not going to pick up the 5th-year option on Jerry Jeudy, it behooves them to trade him.
Yes,
and that's the thing that we don't have a firm indication on right now, but if where there's smoke, there's usually fire. And if there are all these possible deals being floated out there and discussed and all that are the chatter that's going around the league right now, then that tells me that at best they haven't decided on Jerry Jeudy's 5th-year option, and it's possible that they may not pick it up. And if that's the case, to me, I think you have to just bite the bullet and move him, and then go fishing in the 2nd-round pool for a wide receiver.
What haven't they seen? That's my question with the Jerry Jeudy thing, because I'm like, we saw it when they made him backside X and they made him the primary read, and he came through. Like, I don't think it's a locker room thing. I don't think it's a work ethic thing. And it's just like, okay, it's Sean Payton, it's fresh eyes, and it's maybe that need for picks. And Jeudy is an attractive target potentially for trades. But anytime I consider this, Mace, I just go, well, what hasn't he shown to slap that 5th-year option on him?
It's a question of who and what is the real Jerry Jeudy. Is the real Jerry Jeudy the guy up to the end of November 2022, right? Forget about the drops back in 2020, because he had a high drop rate. His drop rate since then isn't in the same galaxy.
And his drop rate was lower than Devontae Adams that year.
Yeah. So it's, I think that's relevant. But when you look at the overall data and you see, okay, this is what Jerry Jeudy has been, and then this is what he was for the final 6 games of 2022. Who is the real Jerry Jeudy? If you think the real Jerry Jeudy is the guy that flourished in those last 6 games, you pick up the option, you make him the wide receiver 1. But are you concerned that, and especially if he's not the number 1 wide receiver in that room, if he's not that backside X that you referenced, that the production isn't going to reflect that? And frankly, as we saw from Jerry Jeudy the first 2.5 seasons, when he wasn't always highly involved in the game plan, sometimes there could be lapses on his part, right? We know that when he's that backside X and when he is the number 1 option, we know that he's going to be engaged, involved, and productive. So is that something the Broncos are willing to do? I mean, that's the thing. If you bring back Jerry Jeudy and you pick up the 5th-year option, what you should be doing is saying, okay, we're ride or die with him as our number 1 wide receiver. With all respect to Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick and everybody else in that room, the alpha is going to be Jerry Jeudy, right? And then you go from there. And I think the production is going to likely reflect that. So that's where I stand on it. What to me, I'm asked, should the Broncos trade him? And I answer it with a question, because the answer to whether I think the Broncos should trade him depends on what the Broncos think of him and what they think his role is going to be.
Yeah. And for me, I'd like to see him get that opportunity. Because, again, I don't know what it is, Mace. Maybe it's math. And maybe because I was bad at math, I shouldn't bring that up. But, like, I'm an artist, of course. Like, science and history and art, they're my favorite subjects. But anyway, the math to me is I want to find the solution the fastest. I want the fastest. That's why I wanted Paxton Lynch to play. Okay. And everyone paints me as a Paxton guy. Yes, I had a first round grade on him. Yes, he was drafted in the first round, unlike Connor Cook, who fell in the fourth. I won't bring up me and Joel Klatt's beef, but like, okay, yes. And then I wanted him to play over Trevor Siemian because I knew Trevor wasn't that guy. And I wanted to know if Paxton was. Obviously, I needed to spend more time actually talking to him before the draft so I could be like, oh, it's not there. But like, so, and I take that L, I talk about it. I learn more from my misses than from my hits. But Mace, for me, it's an equation thing. Like, I want to know faster. And this whole Jerry Jeudy thing, we've wasted so much time with Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy, can he be the alpha? He already should have been. Hey, can he be the alpha? He should have been the backside X from day one. I don't care who else you have on the roster. You take what was then seen as the best receiver in the best receiving class in NFL history. You give him the damn ball. So if it was me, I'd feed Jerry Jeudy. I'd feed him all the time. And if he did it, great. And if he didn't, great. Because then you'd know. Right now, there's this mystery fog about Jerry Jeudy. Like, we don't really know if he can be that 1,200, 1,500 yard guy. We don't really know. And damn it, I'd like to find out.
And you know what? The opportunity to know, the best opportunity would have been last season, right?
Yep.
When Tim Patrick was injured. That should have been the window where you tried to find out from the start of the season. Okay.
And in training camp, you and I love Court. I don't mean to cut you off, but in training camp, did we ever see Courtland Sutton do anything? And I love Court. I don't even like saying this.
There were a couple of plays.
But maybe a couple times, but we're talking about, you and I watched every practice of everything, and we only saw Courtland look like old Courtland a couple of times. You should have known week one, make Jerry your number one.
Yeah. And the thing is, after week one, I thought they might well do that because that was a marvelous play that he had in Seattle in adjusting to the ball. That was a high level moment from Jerry Jeudy. You saw that flash right there of what he can be. And then you de-emphasize him for the next several weeks. It's like, what are you guys doing here? I mean, with all respect to Tyree Cleveland, why are you throwing to Tyree Cleveland down the stretch when you're trying to preserve a lead against the Colts? You shouldn't have been going for the end zone anyway. But if you had to throw, no, not Tyree Cleveland there. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. And so as a result of that, we're having this discussion about, do you pick up the option or not? Because we don't have all the data that we could have had if they just come out and emphasized him from the get-go and kept emphasizing him. It's, there are so many failures. You could write not just a book, but a full-on encyclopedia of all the failures and things the Broncos did wrong last year. And this is a few chapters right there. How they messed up with Jerry Jeudy, leading them to this moment where you're thinking, oh, we might trade him because we might not give him the 5th-year option. And it's just, oh man.
The long-term health of this team is much more important than, I mean, they should have been forward thinking. It's like when Gary didn't play Paxton in that last game. It's like, dude, it's not, I know it's your last game, Gary, and I love Gary Kubiak, but I know it's your last game, but like, dude, you're up by however many against the Raiders. Like, put in the kid that doesn't know what he's doing. And everyone making fun of his 8 plays. Well, hey, run those 8 plays and then try to feed him more. And when you can't do it, you go draft Josh Allen. Like, you're wasting time. I just feel like we've wasted time with Jerry Jeudy. And like, there's something in there with Jerry Jeudy. And yes, is he a prima donna? And yes, does he have to be backside X? Yeah, but fine. Most any wide receiver is got that diva in him. I want to see the production, and that could be there. And I feel like we might have missed a window.
Well, and the thing is, now Sean Payton's going by what he's watched on film, right?
Yes.
And what he's watched on film obviously has not sold him on Jerry Jeudy, because if it had sold him on Jeudy, we wouldn't be hearing about these rumblings right now, right? That's the thing. Ultimately, it's all Sean Payton's call. Ultimately, it is, and and the rumblings don't seem to be going away. But again, it may well have to be something where it kind of goes on ice, and then we hear about it again in a few weeks. And we got some comments there on the coaching. Jose is saying, don't underestimate how bad the coaching was last year and has been. On the position coaching at wide receiver, I've got to disagree with that take, because Zach Azzani's held in pretty high esteem in most circles around the league. So I think there's a lot of schematic issues, but there's a reason why 2 different head coaches kept Zach Azzani on the staff when they came in, why he survived the transition to Fangio and the transition to Nathaniel Hackett. He's pretty good at what he does.
Mace, I always appreciate when you can go overtime with me, because I'm like, damn it, we got a lot to get to, and we got sidetracked by the damn towel talk. David,
yeah. It was interesting.
It was. We're like the dog on Up, right? Squirrel. Yeah. Towel.
This is why, like, a timeline down the side of the screen, I mean, it might be a little problematic, because you and I just kind of take this thing in whatever direction they want to.
Kind of roll, baby.
Especially the Friday show. I mean, I have a feeling like as we go really into the off season even further, the Friday shows are really going to be mess around Fridays around here. But I digress.
Yeah, that's fine.
Anyway,
it's all good.
You doing okay?
I'm hanging in there, man. I'm hanging in there. How about you?
I'm hanging in there too. I'm gonna tell you what you tell me sometimes. Light and sweet, baby. Light and sweet, baby.
I love it.
Hopefully you keep that in mind and you'll feel a little bit better.
I love it. Until next time, he's Andrew Mason. Follow him on Twitter at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey, saying be safe, be kind, know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned, and as always, please stay frosty.